NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has hardly opened its eyes, and the universe is new. More mysterious, more beautiful than humanity's dreams.
It began as a faint flicker, just a strange, cold glint captured by telescopes in Hawaii and South Africa. At first, it was another blip in the endless sky, barely a headline. But as the world's sharpest eyes turned toward it, the truth emerged. This wasn't a comet or asteroid, but something faster, brighter, and stranger than anything we'd charted. The James Webb Space Telescope locked on. And for the first time, we weren't just wondering if we were alone. What if something out there is watching us back? The flicker. No one expected. Have you ever thought about how many secrets the universe keeps from us, simply because we are not paying attention? Late one night in June, the Atlas system in Hawaii, a network built to watch for asteroids that could threaten Earth, detected something strange. The object was cold, silent, and moving at speeds rarely seen, over 150,000 miles per hour. Within hours, observatories in South Africa, Australia, and the Canary Islands caught the same signal. NASA's Minor Planet Center issued a rare, rapid alert. The entire planetary defense community was suddenly awake. At first, astronomers did what they always do. They checked for data errors. Was it a glitch, a reflection, a cosmic ray? When the data held up, they started running simulations. The object's orbit didn't match anything local. It wasn't bound to the sun. It wasn't circling quietly between Mars and Jupiter or meandering in from the Oort cloud. When its path was traced backward, it pointed not to our solar system, but out toward interstellar space, possibly from the direction of the galactic core. This was a traveler, a wanderer, an uninvited guest from somewhere beyond our cosmic backyard. The media barely noticed at first, but scientists felt a jolt of fear. What were the odds?
None of these known large NEOs pose any threat of impact to the Earth within the next 100 years.
Before 2017, humanity had never seen an interstellar object cross into our system. Suddenly, this was the third. Each one, from Oumuamua to Borisov, had been stranger than the last. This new visitor, quickly christened 3I Atlas, was setting new records for speed, for trajectory, for sheer inexplicable behavior. Within 12 hours, the James Webb Space Telescope, our most advanced eye in the cosmos, was diverted from its deep-time mission to focus on something much closer and, for the first time, potentially much more dangerous. Something in the data had everyone on edge. Was this a cosmic fluke? Or the first sign that the universe wasn't just full of rocks and ice, but in tension? As data poured in and alarms echoed across observatories, a sense of unease spread. Was this just another chapter in the story of our restless galaxy, or the prologue to a tale humanity was never supposed to read? Unnatural patterns and impossible light. Why did 3I Atlas immediately send shivers through the scientific world? Because its behavior didn't fit any of the neat little boxes astronomers rely on. For decades, the rules had seemed clear. Asteroids tumble in chaotic spins, comets leave ghostly tails, and only planets reflect sunlight in predictable patterns. But 3I Atlas, its brightness didn't match its size. According to calculations, the object should have been massive, but it was surprisingly compact. The light it reflected was too clean, too metallic, almost like the polished surface of a spacecraft. The closer it came, the stranger things got. James Webb's instruments picked up a cold, hollow signature. One side of the object seemed to absorb more heat than the other, a characteristic seen in engineered materials, not random space debris. Spectroscopy revealed absorption lines that matched not rock or ice, but advanced carbon structures. If you built a shell to survive thousands of years in deep space, this is the material you would choose. Harvard astrophysicist R.V. Loeb, already famous for suggesting that Oumuamua might have been artificial, saw the same red flags. he urged the community to watch for non-gravitational acceleration, tiny deviations in the object's motion that could not be explained by the sun's pull or the pressure of light. If Atlas showed such deviations, it wouldn't be drifting. It would be navigating. In other words, someone or something might be steering. What's more, the surface of 3I Atlas was symmetrical. It spun with a precision that made physicists nervous. Comets wobble, asteroids tumble. This visitor turned smoothly, with purpose. Was it signaling? Was it charging up energy from the sun like a solar sail?
Primarily looking at light reflected by the asteroid from the sun. If sunlight hits the asteroid, reflects just like everything in the solar system.
The scientific community divided into camps. Some clung to natural explanations, desperate not to upend centuries of cosmic order. Others, emboldened by Webb's strange data, whispered of a messenger. And as 3I Atlas inched closer to the sun, those whispers grew louder. Was this the moment we'd been warned about in science fiction for generations? Or just the universe once again refusing to play by our rules? A lineage of cosmic strangers. If Atlas had arrived a decade ago, it would have been dismissed as a mathematical outlier, a one-in-a-million shot, but the world had already been prepared for weirdness. In 2017, the world watched Oumuamua sail through the solar system. Its shape was like a cosmic cigar, its motion inexplicably smooth, its acceleration after passing the sun unexplainable by gas or dust. Then came Borisov in 2019, a true comet from the deep, blazing with more energy than anything we had seen. The odds of seeing 3 interstellar objects in under 10 years were staggeringly low. Was it just random chance, or a sign that something fundamental had changed? Astronomers began to see a pattern. Oumuamua had no tail, but sped up mysteriously after its closest solar approach. Borisov was a hyperactive comet, almost reckless in its energy. Atlas combined the strangest properties of both: a dazzling brightness, a perfect trajectory, and now signs of internal complexity. Some began to wonder, could these objects be related? Were they fragments of an ancient message, a cosmic relay, or even autonomous probes sent on a schedule only their makers understood? The possibility was both exhilarating and terrifying. Avi Loeb took things further, suggesting that humanity might be observing the echoes of a long-ago contact. What if Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas were not random, but a deliberate sequence? A slow, deliberate wave disguised as cosmic chance? If so, the only variable that had changed was us, our ability to notice, to record, and to wonder. For centuries, our skies had been empty. Now they were full, and perhaps always had been. Was it possible that, for all of human history, we had simply been too blind to see what was passing us by? The question no one wants to ask. With every new observation, the natural explanations grew thinner. Scientists worked around the clock, poring over light curves, spectra, and orbital models. What they saw forced them to confront a question nobody wanted to ask out loud. What if this wasn't natural? Not aliens in the sense of little green men, but something more subtle and more disturbing. Probes. Artificial messengers sent long ago from worlds far older and more advanced than ours. Loeb's team pushed for more data, urging NASA to look for further signs of engineering. Regular spin, heat absorption, hollow cavities, patterns in the light curve. The James Webb Telescope delivered more surprises. Instead of rocky debris, its sensors found surfaces with absorption lines, more often seen in advanced carbon composites. One hemisphere seemed to be coated with something almost like a heat shield. When the spectral data was released, a handful of engineers and material scientists around the world had the same reaction. If you wanted to build a messenger that could survive deep space, you would use exactly these materials. This realization spread quietly through the halls of power. National defense agencies began asking new questions. What if this was a probe? What if it was signaling home? If it was, who or what might be waiting for our response? Suddenly, the stakes had shifted. Science fiction had become national security, and nobody knew what the rules were anymore. Was this the universe's way of nudging us toward a greater truth? Or the first step in a story humanity wasn't prepared to finish? The silence falls. At first, governments and space agencies were almost boastful about the discovery. NASA, the ESA, and even India's ISRO pushed out data, live streams, and raw telescope feeds. But as the strangeness piled up, the flow of information slowed, then stopped. Pages that once hosted live mission logs vanished. Observation windows closed without warning. Social media teams went silent. Requests for James Webb's raw data were met with internal review. FOIA requests returned only heavily redacted fragments. Whispers from inside observatories leaked. Researchers were being reassigned, teams broken up, security tightened. Access to telescope feeds, once shared freely, was now restricted to a handful of insiders. Was this caution, or something more? Had someone seen a pattern, a signal, or a design that crossed an invisible line? Some suggested a radio pulse had been detected, a repeating pattern matching Atlas's rotation, possibly a mathematical sequence. Others hinted at more: high-precision telemetry, radio interference, or unexplained emissions. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer just observing, it was reacting. And the world's leaders, terrified by the implications, were scrambling to decide what the public could know. Control had shifted from science to security, and the silence was as telling as any message sent across the stars. What were they trying to hide? Had we found something so profound, so dangerous, that even the truth itself needed to be protected? Signs in the shadows. For the amateur astronomers and independent researchers shut out of official channels, the quest for truth became personal. In backyards and remote outposts, they pointed their scopes at 3i Atlas, desperate for one last glimpse. That's when the whispers started to spread. Strange radio patterns, small fluctuations in the object's light, and shadows that seemed to ripple across its surface. People began recording the object's rotation, tracking the pulses that aligned with each spin. Some believed they saw repeating patterns in the reflected light, almost like a code, a beacon sent not to the world, but to anyone clever enough to notice. Radio hobbyists picked up faint signals that matched the object's position in the sky, signals that grew stronger as Atlas passed closest to Earth. On online forums, debates raged. Was this proof of a transmission, a message from the void, or just the mind playing tricks, seeing order in the randomness? The few scientists who dared to speak publicly were cautious, but not dismissive. They agreed. If there was a signal, it was nothing Earth had ever broadcast. Somewhere, buried in the data, was a hint of intelligence, a signature that could change everything. And yet, as the world held its breath, the only reply was silence. The panic behind closed doors. As Atlas closed in, panic set in behind closed doors. Memos circulated within NASA, ESA, and the world's intelligence agencies. Some warned of an existential anomaly. Others called for immediate classified briefings. There were rumors of last-minute probes launched from secret launch pads, of deep space assets repositioned to intercept or observe. In Europe, a consortium of physicists sent a private letter to the UN, warning of the potential implications of techno-signatures. In Washington, the president's science advisor briefed the National Security Council. The language was measured, but the urgency was clear. If 3i Atlas was artificial, it represented the most significant discovery in human history, and nobody knew what would happen next. Publicly, officials stuck to the script. Ongoing investigation, no cause for alarm, nothing to see here. But leaks told a different story. Some claimed classified data showed not just symmetry and signals, but tiny corrections in Atlas's path, moves that looked less like drift and more like guidance. Theories multiplied. Was Atlas here to study us, warn us, or simply observe? Was it alone, or were there more waiting to be found? Was it an ancient probe, lost and drifting, or a sentinel, recording everything and waiting for us to reach a level of awareness before sending its report home? And in the silence, the world's fears grew. If we were being watched, what did our observer want? And would it be satisfied with what it saw? The panic behind closed doors. As Atlas closed in, panic set in behind closed doors, not just in NASA's dimly lit offices or in the corridors of the European Space Agency, but in the fortified meeting rooms of world governments, military think tanks, and clandestine intelligence cells. Classified memos flew across continents, marked with warnings like existential anomaly and immediate threat to paradigm. For perhaps the first time since the Cold War, there was a global consensus on one thing. Nobody knew what was coming next, and no one was prepared. Inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, senior engineers pored over the latest trajectory data. There were rumors that a cluster of rapid response satellites had been repositioned to triangulate any anomalous signals emanating from Atlas. Behind the scenes, defense agencies debated contingency plans for scenarios that, just weeks before, belonged strictly to the realm of speculative fiction. Could Atlas be intercepted? Should it be? And what would happen if a message was decoded, or worse, if a reply was demanded? Meanwhile, the United Nations received a private letter signed by over 100 leading astrophysicists and mathematicians from around the world. The letter urged an emergency session, citing the potential for non-human intelligence to have engineered 3I Atlas. The language was diplomatic, but urgent. Hidden between the lines was a call to rethink not just planetary defense, but the very foundations of science, security, and diplomacy. How do you negotiate with a probe that might be thousands or even millions of years old? Across the Atlantic, in secure rooms beneath London, Paris, and Berlin, intelligence analysts worked to compile a dossier of every techno-signature ever observed, from odd radio blips to unexplained thermal anomalies, to the flickers of light seen on the dark side of Atlas. Could these be instructions, or mere artifacts of a malfunctioning machine? Some experts warned that if there was a message embedded in the data, it might be too advanced for us to even recognize as a language. Others feared something even more chilling, that the true message was in the timing itself and in the act of being seen. As public briefings grew more generic and evasive, journalists turned to leaks and anonymous sources. What they learned was deeply unsettling. Not only had data flow been restricted, but at least one world government was alleged to have called for information containment, a policy aimed at slowing the viral spread of unverified Atlas theories across social media. In Moscow and Beijing, similar moves were made. Satellite feeds rerouted. Citizen astronomers discouraged from publicizing their findings. In the United States, internal NASA emails hinted at the creation of a black archive, where raw data from Atlas would be kept out of reach from even the agency's own staff, for fear that something in it could spark a panic, or worse, a confrontation between nations racing to unlock the technology first. As the days ticked by, rumors multiplied. Had a probe been sent up in secret to rendezvous with Atlas? Had encrypted signals been detected, too faint or too strange to be made public? No one knew for sure. In academic forums, a wave of new papers appeared, often under pseudonyms, proposing everything from ancient alien artifacts to a cosmic census mechanism, a way for advanced civilizations to record and catalogue the rise of new intelligences across the galaxy. Some even speculated that Atlas was a test, a cosmic invitation, or a final exam to see if humanity could prove itself capable of recognizing and interpreting a message not meant for mere curiosity, but for mutual understanding. But there was another layer to the panic, deeper than science or politics. For many scientists and world leaders, the most terrifying prospect wasn't invasion, or even contact. It was irrelevance. If we were just one more data point in a galactic census, what did that say about humanity's place in the cosmos? Had we ever truly mattered? Or had we only just become interesting enough to be noticed? In the end, the sense of panic was not just about Atlas itself, but about what it meant for the entire human story. As Atlas glided silently through the void, watched by eyes both organic and artificial, It forced the world to reckon with the possibility that we were not alone, and that our story might only be a footnote in a universe older and stranger than we could imagine. The unsettling future. What happens when a civilization realizes it is not the only watcher in the dark? That is the question now haunting astronomers, philosophers, and ordinary people alike. In the aftermath of Atlas, the boundaries of science, myth, and security have blurred beyond recognition. There are those who say this is just the beginning, that more interstellar objects will follow, each stranger and more revealing than the last. Some believe that a pattern will emerge, a series of cosmic breadcrumbs leading us toward a truth bigger than anything we've imagined. Others, deeply unsettled, worry about what comes next. Will humanity answer the message, if there is one? Will we send our own probes, our own signals, into the dark, knowing now that someone might answer? Or will fear and secrecy win as governments tighten their grip on the flow of knowledge? In every great turning point, there is a moment when the future hangs in the balance. The arrival of 3i Atlas is that moment. Whether it is a warning, an invitation, or just the universe playing with dice, it has forced us to confront the unknown, not just in the cosmos, but within ourselves. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to peer back in time, to reveal the first stars, the oldest galaxies, and the mysteries of creation itself. But in the end, it showed us something closer and far more profound, that the greatest mysteries may be passing us by every night, unnoticed, until we are finally ready to see. Now, the question is not just what is out there, but who is out there, and what do they see when they look back at us? The search for answers will not end with Atlas. In fact, it is only beginning. And if you're one of those who refuses to look away, who wants to know what lies beyond the next flicker in the sky, then stay tuned. Subscribe for the next chapter in the greatest story humanity has ever known, because the universe is watching, and now, so are we.